Y'all Podcast.
Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to another edition of the F Y'all Podcast. I am your co-host, Michael Wright. Sitting next to me is the man, the one and only, the legendary Mr. C.T. Fletcher. And Pops, we got another good show coming up for the listeners. How you feeling today?
I am blessed as always. And like you said, we have an unbelievable guest, another unbelievable show that we are bringing to you empty-headed motherfuckers.
All right, ladies and gentlemen. So today's guest is Chet Fortune. He is the founder of Coach Chet, a performance coaching brand focused on building durable, high-output athletes without the burnout. He's best known for translating game plans into conditioning that holds up under pressure, including work with world-class fighters like Terence Crawford. Chet blends assessments, progressive loading, and fight-specific tempo work with a no-nonsense culture, clear standards, honest feedback, and repeatable systems. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the F Y'all Podcast, the one and only Chet Fortune. How you doing today, sir?
Hey, I'm doing blessed and highly favored. I'm on the F Y'all Podcast. Let's fucking go. I'm ready to go. No, I'm doing good. I'm doing good, though.
All right, Pops. I know you've been looking forward to this one. You got anything you want to start off with?
Absolutely. Okay, we're going to get to Terence Crawford, but I want to talk about Chet Fortune. I think is definitely in the running for trainer, well, at least strength conditioning trainer of the year with what he pulled off. But I want to know about Chet Fortune's story, his own story. Okay, how did you get to be this sensational coach? I know a little bit about the story. I know from your Instagram, and I know that you had a very serious accident and you had to come back from that. And I know that, I'm all for that coming back shit. So tell us a little bit about your personal story, Coach Chet.
Okay. I owned a gym. Like 2012, I opened up a gym. I had a passion for fitness, knew that's what I wanted to do. A lot of good career type pharmaceutical sales, branch management for banks, all kinds of stuff. So the business resume was strong, got my MBA, my BA. I just knew at the end of the day, you spend a lot of time at work. If you're not passionate about what you're doing, what the fuck you doing it for? Mm-hmm. So, I opened a janitorial service, had a mentor, that successful, always driving nice cars and stuff like that. Black, looked a lot, felt a lot like me that I vibe with, so that was my first business. It took off. I realized, hey, I hate cleaning up behind people. People are dirty, some dirty motherfuckers. So at the end of the day, I was just I never left the gym though. So track and football, did that in high school. And one thing that never left was, hitting the weight room. I just enjoyed spending time in the weight room every day and had people following me and just thought, at the end of the day, I could probably get paid to do this shit. So, got my CPT and didn't want to work for a gym, didn't want to look anything like the trainers that they had at these global gyms. I found some space and I said, let's get it. It struggled, then got into Shape Magazine as, one of the top US trainers. And that opened up the door to, the local newspaper, the local Omaha magazine, and started bringing some professional football players, some other athletes, in my doors. And, I met Terence because went to a fight. He fought Ugursky Gamboa, sat ringside, pounding the team as they walked by, looked at the friend that went with me. I was like, I'm going to train him one day. Watch, I'm going to train him. Reached out to the team a couple months later. He came in, popped in, and, I'm getting to the accident. It's just part of the story. So, he came in about a month later, tried it out, loved it. Was like, I want to come back on Friday. I was like, most definitely. And at that time, I'm just thinking, just promote my business, promote my gym, get, look who's training at my gym. He was a world champion at 135 at the time already. And, he popped in Friday, loved it. We pushed each other. When he came in, I was the type of trainer that I had 3 group camp classes a day and personal training sessions, as early as 6 a.m., as late as 8, 9 o'clock p.m. And I trained with everybody. If I had 8, 9 sessions, I'm your bunny, and it was no different for Terence, coming in as a world champion. I'm like, I really want to see where I'm at. I know that I can push, I know I can go, but let me see how much go I got with an elite athlete, and Friday went great. We're playing basketball in the back and he's just like, man, I need you in camp. I need you to be my strength and conditioning coach. And I'm like, something I love to do. Let me think about it. Where's training? He's like, Colorado Springs, we'll be there 6 to 8 weeks. And then, fight week in the fight city. And, that's how we're going to do it. He was training for Dieri Jean at the time. And I was like, let me get back to you because I've never been a part of this. I don't know what it takes. I don't know what it looks like for my business. Definitely something I want to do. He was like, cool, but we leave Sunday, so I need to know by tomorrow. And I'm like, fuck it. I'm not going, I'm gonna make this happen some kind of way.
Absolutely.
So, 10 years later, still with the team. But 2018, there's been some camps that I wasn't a part of, for whether business, family, whatever reason, like we've got other strength coaches we work with. Obviously all the undisputeds I've been a part of, Ndongo and Lincoln, Spence, 2 years ago, and then obviously Canelo. And, so I know, the team is a high functioning team, no matter, if I'm there or not. But I've always thought that, I'm that guy as far as strength and conditioning, like what it takes to get an athlete at their best. I know how to push them the right way. 2021, I wasn't, training Terence at the time. I wasn't doing the camp. I think he had fought Kell Brook or something like that. I wasn't a part of that camp. I was director of business development for, some medical clinic. Just a bad year. I lost a lot of friends, like 2 friends in the same month in January. The January 6th resurrection, COVID, I had caught COVID, my 1-year-old, and, my wife she had caught the house full of COVID. And, it was just the feelings were just all. So I got on a prescription medication called Ambien. The nurse practitioner at the facility that I was the director of business development for was like, this will help out. And so got the best night of sleep that I got in, months off that Ambien pill, waited a week. I was going to do another podcast the following week. It was, the Sunday. And then Monday I had a podcast with one of the top, physicians here, medical director for our clinic, 40-year hematologist, and this professional strength and conditioning coach coming together to talk about health and fitness and everything in between. And so,
Mm-hmm.
excited for it. Was watching Enter the Dragon, 7:30 p.m. Bruce Lee. I took the Ambien. My daughter was 1. She went upstairs to go to sleep, and I woke up 4 days later. Neurosurgeon waking me up saying, "Hey, are you with us?" And I'm thinking I'm just waking up. Like, what the hell is going on? I'm still not. This is a dream. And he was like, "You probably can't feel anything below your waist, but we did a spinal fusion, your vertebrae C3 through T1. So you got 6 vertebrae in your neck that are attached to your spine. 4 of them were in puzzle pieces. Man. So like anybody that knows anything about a spine, there was misalignment throughout the spine, but the C3 through T1, those specific 4 vertebrae, they're broken in pieces. Some point in the night, I slept walk, got up, got in my car, and hit a ravine, like a concrete barrier, went up the barrier, hit some trees. My car flipped over, rolled a couple times in the street. When they got to me, my car was in, smashed up. Half my body, half my torso was in the passenger seat. I don't remember any of it. Not, I think that's one part of that's good is that, getting in a car, I don't get nervous or anxious at this point in life just because I don't remember it. But put in an induced coma, spinal fusion. The doctors told my family even after the surgery, and it was one of the best, again, COVID. So the top neurosurgeon in the state just happened, who doesn't even spend a lot of time at UNMC, the hospital where I was treated, University of Nebraska Medical Center. But he just happened to be there because they were short staffed. And, out of anybody in the state that probably could have had a successful surgery, he just happened, it was God's plan, for him to be there that night, do surgery on me. And, even after he was just like, hey, we got to put him in a coma. There's no guarantee, he's in bad shape, but, the successful surgery is possible. And, so when they woke me up, I'm, looking at the physicians thinking 2 things, damn, am I ever going to see a gym again? I love the gym, love working out. And now you're telling me, I won't walk and I can't walk, And then, the second thing is, does my junk still work? To do that. What's the point of living through this?
Oh, boy.
Can't work out, can't,
typical man thought or something like that.
Come on now. I'm being real. It's a real podcast. I'm being real with y'all. So, the first 9 days at that hospital, they sent me to, rehabilitation hospital. Did 3 months there. Couldn't even get out of, I couldn't even sit up. They tried to sit me up and I, start to 80 over 60 for my blood pressure, start sweating profusely, feel like I was going to throw up. And, they put me in a gait belt to try to get me a wheelchair to get me to physical therapy. And it take a good 30 minutes just to get, my bearings and straight. By the time we got to physical therapy, we got 30, 45 minutes to work with. And, I'm not all there. I couldn't even get on the parallel bars. Like I couldn't get out of the seat without feeling like I was going to throw up all over again. So, at that time I was training for my 5th, Arnold Classic, so CT, I actually met you with King ISO. I brought him, he traveled with me to the show the year before. And, that was a COVID year, like they didn't really allow guests. It was going to be weird.
Can I show a little love to King ISO before you go on? King ISO, that's a good brother right there, man.
Shout out.
I just want to take a second to show some love to King ISO. That's a good brother right there, man.
Yeah, I've been vibing, like I used to do music and stuff, and like I just knew he had the talent back, when he was 15, 16 years old. Like, man, this dude's gonna be something. He was going through, which he raps about, he's going through some stuff, and like not knowing where he was gonna stay. And I pick him up, go to the gym with him, like, hey, let's just go get a workout, come get a workout in with me. And we do music, on the side. And I just knew, I was like, man, out of our little circle of everybody that's trying to do this thing, like, this dude has got he's got to go. And, he's got the work ethic to make it work. But, like I said, that was the mindset, coming out of that accident was like, like ultimately I got to stop listening to everybody around me that's telling me, you're not going to walk again. You're not going to, like, y'all don't know me. Like, like I'm going to get it. I can have the best of the best, call me coach, and go off my motivation and go off of, the things that I tell them to be successful. And, like, that's going to be no different for this situation. My 1-year-old, I got 2 other kids that are a little older, but my 1-year-old specifically, I just knew, I was like, she's not going to know me as her dad as somebody that's always been in a wheelchair. That's not the life that she's going to remember. Cause at 1, you don't remember nothing, but by the time she's 2, 3 years old, like, I want to be able to do stuff with her, play sports with her, and just be that dad that, my other kids got to experience. So that was a lot of my motivation, was just, I already had the strong mindset, like getting in the gym, putting in work, not being afraid of some smoke, like that's always been me, and being able to motivate others to do that, but ultimately, like, you've got this overcoming adversity obstacle that you've never experienced before. And, I'm not going to have the circle around me tell me I can't, like, you tell me I can't, I'm gonna show you how I will, and that was the accident. So I talked a lot, but
no.
So let me ask you, that mindset that you're referring to,
Absolutely.
Where did that come from? How did that get instilled into you?
Like
were you born? Were you born?
Like, honestly, like, I've had this discussion because I've had a lot of doctors people reach out with people going through similar situations. And obviously, I want to be that positive motivation to help out. And, but, like, you're born with that shit. You know what I mean? Like, Bud, greatest all time, at 7 years old, he knew he was going to be on the Mount Rushmore. He knew that going in. A lot of the NFL guys that I work with, same thing. Like, when they were playing Pop Warner, they knew, the goal was NFL. I'm going to do whatever it takes to be that 1%. And, like, I think I felt like I was that 1%, like from a work ethic standpoint, like from the beginning, like, when I played Pop Warner football and in the 5th or 6th grade. And so and I told Terence and other athletes the story, like, we could go to practice, football practice. And as soon as we get there, hey, warm up, take a lap around the track. And I had to be in front just cause, I had to be in front. Or if we were lining up, a little 3-yard drill, somebody's going to get popped the ball and, you don't have no room to juke them, run straight through them. Mm-hmm. I didn't care. I've always been on the smaller side. I'm 5'9" now, like somewhat average, but back then, I was short, and I still had that, I don't care who I'm going up against, like, I'm going to shine every time, type of attitude. So I think, like for me, like, from a young age, I was born with that work ethic, that feat of wanting to, be great and, like, be recognized. And, like for some people it can be built with time, they've got the attributes and, like they can get a good circle around them and good coaches, and they can build from that and be, even better because they've got the physical attributes. But, like that mindset, is something that can be improved. But I think the great athletes that I've been at that have performed at world class and professional levels, they were born with that shit. They were, like Bud, I don't have to motivate. He's not scared to smoke. He doesn't have to, he's going to do whatever it takes to reach his goal and be at his ultimate best, So it's a lot easier working with individuals that already have that mindset that are, and I think that's kind of, why one of the reasons I closed my gym was, dealing with so many, I probably got 30,000 hours worth of, general public type training. And, at the end of the day, you get frustrated when, somebody starts, they're motivated, want to lose all this weight, want to gain all this weight, put on this muscle, want to do this show, want to compete at, a collegiate D1 level or a professional level. And then, you put them through some work and, they break down too easy. They quit too easy, or it gets tough and, they're over it. Y'all have y'all's close calls with life and, performed at high levels, motivated others. So, I mean, I know y'all know the language I'm speaking, when I say, some people are born with the shit. Some people may be able to improve on it. And, most people just don't have it.
I was one of those people where I had to improve on it. I can tell you, honestly, I wasn't born with that shit. And that's the reason my ass was 475 pounds at one time, because I wasn't born with that.
Yeah.
But I need people to understand, some people may not be born with it, but it's something, if you are willing to dedicate the time, it's something you can get. You can earn that. That shit has to be earned.
Oh, yeah.
And I had to learn that lesson later on in my life. Sometimes I look back on it, wish I would have had that mindset early on, because I probably wouldn't be dealing with a lot of the health crap that I'm dealing with now, just from years of neglecting my health and all of that stuff. So to meet people like CT Fletcher, to see people like you that just born with it, man, I got kind of a little bit jealous of that shit, because just to have that naturally within you and not have to go out and look for it, I know that's got to be an amazing feeling to have, to know that it's just already in you. It's just there, no matter what. And no matter, like for me, the reason I wanted to lose the weight was for my family. Because I had young kids. I got 4 daughters. I got young kids. I'm married. It's like, at this rate, I'm going to end up killing myself. And everything that I'm dealing with now with my health, had I not lost the weight I lost, I probably would be dead at this point. Absolutely. So I'm listening to you talking. I'm like, damn, that was just, I wish I was born with that. But again, we all have to take our own paths, but just kudos to you, brother, for just having that mindset for as long as you had it, just to be born with it and to see where it's taking you, man. Congratulations.
Yeah, to you, I want to touch on one particular aspect of what you said, and I break it down like this: unmotivated motherfuckers piss me the fuck off.
Come on now. Hey, I closed my gym for a reason. Yeah,
and that's why you said you didn't make a good trainer, right?
I was a horrible trainer, coach, because unmotivated motherfuckers they irritate the fuck out of me, and I tell them in a minute, take your punk ass back home. You wasted my time and your time. I didn't have no clients. Just a very, very few, because, people don't want to take that from no personal trainer. As a personal trainer, they want you to be, coddle them and be their mama and psychiatrist and every fucking thing. I ain't had time for that shit, Coach Chet. I tell you, look, motherfucker, you don't want to be here. Take your punk ass back home. Shit. He need money back. Shit. And I was broke too. But I was a horrible personal trainer. So unmotivated motherfuckers get on my nerves. I want to know, do unmotivated motherfuckers bug you?
Man, I thought, like I said, I've been in corporate world for so long. I had a lot of different, so I've learned and how to deal with other people in other situations. And, it kind of drove me for a while. I want to turn them around. I want to make them think different, and as a trainer, as a personal trainer, half the job is the physical side. The other side is, you were a damn psychologist, so I just learned to deal with it. I was good with people, personable, did I ever like it or like, no, I never liked this. I never liked it. You know, like I'm like, let's put in the work. Like we ain't gotta talk about your day or what's going on with your relationship. Like let's, go let's get better, cause
Yeah.
that was my mindset hitting the gym, like like when I hit it myself is just, throw on my headphones and be better than I was yesterday. So yeah, it's super frustrating when, like others, like I said, they just are so easily broken just because like we don't have that mindset, like it's just a different type. So like you don't understand it when somebody else doesn't have it. But part of it, like when I say mindset, when it comes to physical attributes and self-improvement, from like I said, a physical nature is the competitiveness. Like not everybody's competitive.
Yep.
Not everybody is, like youth sports today is just, we don't keep score. Like, we're just out there and like I never did understand that, like when I did track, like even at a young age, like I'd hop on the line and I'm looking at the people next to me like, man, hey, thanks for showing up, but second is best today for you.
Absolutely.
Like it was just always a win. And, like I didn't care if I was just learning something, like a new board game it could be. Like it could be the first time I'm playing it, like I'm trying to beat that ass, like, and like not everybody, like I said, has that competitive nature. And I think when it comes to, like I said, the physical attributes and self-improvement, when it comes to that area, has also to do with their competitive level. Like if they're not as competitive as an individual, then, their mindset when it comes to anything that's sports and competition related is already going to be at a loss. Like, you got to look at yourself as a winner. Like, like I didn't care again. If it was the first time me learning something, I'm trying to get in that ass. Pause. Like so that's.
But how was it when you have a client like that, but you were able to break down that barrier and get through to them, and you watch them overcome all of those barriers that they're facing, and they hit those goals? How fulfilling to you as a trainer is that for you, though? They may come in unmotivated, but they eventually you crack them and they get there and they exceed everything they thought they could.
That's, like at that almost 8-year mark, why, I kept doing it for so long is because, you got those handful of individuals that you can change, and as a trainer, like it shouldn't be, if you're in it for the training, there's a lot of fitness trainers that don't have half the, knowledge that me or CT have yet, are making hand over fist and millions, like being online, talking about dumb shit or, like I've had all these boxing SNC coaches from around the world that, posted about like, oh, this is why you don't have fighters deadlift. And this is why you don't have fighters do this and that. And then, goes to show, like, hey, I dealt with the greatest fighter and one of the greatest boxers. And, like it worked extremely well for him,
Extremely well.
So like, my thing is if you can break past that barrier of, like self-doubt and you can get somebody committed and, they can learn from it. Like it's bigger than the money. Like hopefully they learn something, they instill that within their own circle, their family, their kids. And then, maybe they could teach somebody else, like, and that's, I think, fulfillment for me is, like being able to make somebody, change somebody for the better. And then hopefully they can change somebody else, so that's always super empowering and, something, a reason why, like why I get frustrated with a lot of people, but I did it for so long just because I knew there was, like maybe it doesn't work for 100 of them, but if I could change one person, I'm making a difference,
Can we go back to the accident and the rehab? Tell me, and I asked this question out of my own curiosity because I just recently had open heart surgery, and I know what that rehab has been like for me, and it's been tough. Mentally, what was the rehab like for you to overcome that accident and get back? So take me through the mental aspect of how you bounce back from that.
Man, I was going through some things, personally at home in my marriage, and like it was all like, plenty of days where I woke up, like not being able to move even a toe on either foot, and thinking like, why'd you let me live through this shit? Like I already had shit going on, and now like I'm not trying to be a vegetable or wheeling myself around everywhere. Like, why'd you let me live? But it must be for a reason, like.
And when you said why you let me live, you talking to God.
Yeah,
right?
I'm talking to the man.
Yeah,
I'm talking to him. Me and him in my room by myself, COVID going on. Can't nobody but maybe one guest come to see me at a time. And, Yeah, no, I had a lot of conversations with God, and not necessarily mad, just trying to figure out the whys. And
Why?
then, for me, it came to a point where, like I had a conversation with myself, like, you've never quit on anything in life. Like you've been successful and great, at everything you really put your mind to. So, like, why is this situation any different? Like it can change. You could be the one. And, like for me, like the early couple weeks where, like it was just, I'm using the bathroom. Like that was the most humbling thing is, taking a shit on yourself and having to have a nurse come clean you up. You know what I mean? Like, I can't do a damn thing for
Yep.
myself, like
Oh
humbling,
boy.
but yet in that same breath, there's somebody out there that wish, they could be in pain and feel pain. You know what I
Man, we
mean?
were
There's
just
somebody out
having this
there that,
conversation
yeah,
on
somebody
the
out there that doesn't have, this opportunity for another day, no matter what they were going through. And, like at that point, once I got past that, like feeling sorry for myself and like, I'm not going to be nothing. I was just like, no, if I got to work every day for the rest of my life to walk, to spend some significant, experiences with my youngest daughter and the rest of my kids and my family. And, like, that's what I'm going to do, fight. Like, like I've been around fighters. I've been around champions. I know what, it's like to be great. Cause even 5, 6 years ago, I knew what Bud was. We all knew what he was. We knew what, he would be. It's the rest of the world knows
no,
now.
yeah.
But, like to have those type of individuals around you that, like given all the obstacles and things that, like everybody's going through something and to keep fighting to be great, like that was my mindset. So, like once I got a little toe moving, I told him, I was like, hey, take me off. We've taken all these other pain medications. Take me off these pain meds that, the opioids that are just making me want to go to sleep for the
Yeah.
rest of the day. Like, they're not doing me no good. Maybe that's affecting my blood pressure. We never know. And then, took me off of that. It was like a week before insurance was going to put me in a different rehabilitation center, like a long-term, type care. It wasn't the parallel bars. It was these, it was a walker that you put your forearms on essentially.
Mm-hmm.
And I was like, that's the only thing we ever tried. I know I can't sit up. I know I can't stand, holding my arms up on this parallel bar, but let's just try it, and they were just like, if you can't sit up without, wanting to faint, and I don't know how this is going to work, but we'll try it. I walked down the hallway. I got on them things. I was just felt like even if I'm dragging my legs, like, and I was able to kind of drag my legs down the hallway. And from that point, like I knew I was like, all right, like I got a little win. If I could get a little win every day and put in the work, work hard, that's what it takes. And, I think when it comes to spinal injury specifically, that's a lot of people's issue is, and I'm not saying every spinal issue is the same. Obviously some, there's no getting past, but, specifically, I think for a lot of individuals, they don't have that fight mindset. They don't have that, something I talk about, win anyway. No matter what you're going through, find a way to win. Yeah. And, that was my win anyway, like moment was like, all right, I got down the hallway, the next step is getting around the floor. The next step is, and then, like I told my doctor against doctor's orders, because like I said, COVID just made it hard I hadn't even seen my kids, like, I'm like, at the end of the day, like, I don't want to go to another center and be there another 6. No, send me home. I'm going to push through it. I'll go to outpatient physical therapy. I got a gym in my basement, and, like, I'm a find a way to put some work in every day and get back and get better. And, like it would flow, but, like instead of going home, like that last day with an order because insurance only covered one medical piece of equipment. Instead of having a wheelchair order for me, they ordered a walker, the first time, probably about a month, this is like 6 months after the accident. Probably like a month later, I'm at the house and I'm like, I'm gonna go down the stairs because I live in a raised ranch. You walk in the basement, walk up the stairs, the house is upstairs, and, I was like, answer this door, we'll go down without my walker, I'm gonna get back up. And I got down, answered the door, came back up. And, I never touched that walker again. That was just the type of, like I said, like if I got to struggle and fight, like I've never been scared of no smoking or work, so now's not the time to change that. So yeah, about 6 to 7 months before I started. And even then I'm like holding on to everything, my balance. And, even to this day, 4 years later, my balance is not quite all there. I still get spasms days, some days it's hard to, pick my leg up. I got a little left foot drop, but fuck, there's somebody in a fucking wheelchair. I'm blessed and highly favored.
And I think that's the part that's so important. That's the thing I had to come to the realization when I was getting down on myself about not being able to get out of the bed after this surgery and all of this shit. It's like, but it's somebody out there that's got it way worse than I got it.
Come on now.
And like I said, to have brothers reach out to me and be like, man, I had the same procedure you had, but I still can't get out of the bed. Just to see you up walking around and doing shit is so inspirational. That's when I had to really like, I'm down on myself for what? It's somebody out here doing a lot worse than I'm doing. I'm able, even though I'm winded, I'm tired, I'm fatigued as hell, but I'm able to still get up and do certain shit. And some people that can't get up and do those things.
How was your home life? Mom and dad, sisters and brothers. What's the family?
So I got one brother. You know, my dad was military. He was in the Air Force. You know, retired here. Like it's the center of the map. And, you know, it's a real safe place, good place to grow up kids. You know, like they both grew up in bigger cities and East Coast, both of them. You know, my dad's from Wilmington, Delaware. My mom's from Hampton, Virginia. Mom's got a huge family. Dad's got a good sized family. But like that DC, Baltimore, Hampton area, congested, you know, like just not the feel of my pops. And, you know, when he got here, did some TDYs and, you know, was just like, I'm going to retire here, you know. And so like the majority of my life was spent, you know, like right here in Omaha, Nebraska. You know, born in Madrid, Spain, you know, we lived in Maine, you know, we made some moves, but, you know, here's the majority of where my life is. And, you know, it's a good location because, you know, obviously a lot of greatness that comes from Omaha, you know, being right in the center of the map, you know, like at the same time, you can get to both coasts and, you know, north, south, you know, the same amount of distance and, you know, quiet enough, but yet enough going on to where, you know, it doesn't feel like it's like, you know, it's not like farm. I know we go out of town, I'd see cousins and they think it's tornadoes and cows, you know, like, like we got a whole city, we got black people, you know what I mean? Like there's a lot of there's diversity here. So, you know, it's a good little, like, you know, Omaha's not much different than Kansas City, you know, like, and Kansas City's a little bigger, you know, Des Moines, Denver, you know, like it's a lot like the Midwestern type feel and environment and personalities, yet quiet enough, safe enough. Yeah, you know, we've got, you know, there's bad parts, there's good parts, there's more wealth, there's more millionaires per capita, and I think Omaha than anywhere else in the U.S. And, you know, there's lots of broke too. There's lots of, you know, poverty, and we got that too, you know, but at the same time, you know, the upbringing was good because, you know, my mom came from, like her family, you know, like grew up on farms in Virginia, you know, like Virginia's the first state. So, you know, super Southern, you know, you walk around, people call you boy, you know what I mean? Like just like throws you off and, you know, like what the 13 colonies and her bloodline, I'm sure, you know, there's great grandmas that, you know, might have married their slave owner, you know, like a lot of like I always, you know, you mix with something, you know, what you mix with. Well, you know, like if you know Virginia well, you know, that's that state. You know, like you got a lot of mixing, a lot of Indians and all kinds of things in the bloodline. So, but you know, still came up from that pretty strict, straightforward. I know her parents were strict, and my dad, you know, went to the military like day or two after he's at boot camp after he graduated high school, and you know, wanted to get out of his environment, wanted somewhere that was, you know, quiet, safe, and a little bit more, you know, slow motion. And I think, like I said, ultimately it's been good. They sent me all, like every summer I'd be sent to DC, Philly, Flint, Michigan, Detroit, you know, like they wanted me to get that experience around, you know, like, you know, other environments that, you know, there's a lot more color, you know, but at the same time, I don't feel like I missed out, you know, like typically it's a red state by all means, you know, super conservative here in Nebraska, but you still got a lot of diversity, you know, and it's just a good place to get, you know, somewhat of a grounded type of experience in life. So, you know, like my parents were strict and I had clean up and chores and, you know, stuff to do before they got home and stuff I didn't understand. And, you know, my dad be gone on TDY sometimes and, you know, like, but, you know, like it was good upbringing. You know, they were around, you know, there were two parents that were together, you know, like that's, you know, I had plenty of friends and stuff like that, you know, dad wasn't around or mom wasn't around. So, you know, like I did have the luxury of having parents that, I mean, if you've been through a marriage, you know how tough that shit is, you know? So like you know, they just celebrated their 50th in March you know, to do 50 years together, especially as a black, you know, couple, like it's an amazing, you know, I congratulate on this amazing thing, not hard to do. I'm sure they've had their moments, but, have that old school mentality where, they grew up in an age where people weren't getting divorced either. So, and, they still are together, close, both retired and loving life. And, I'm blessed to have them around. So
3-year-old Coach Chet walking around, and I want to know at that is your earliest memory. You always had that, I'm gonna be the fucking best attitude, or I always envision myself. I mean, as far back as I can possibly remember, which the older I get, it ain't as far as it used to be, but as far back as I possibly, I always thought that I'm going to do something that everybody in the world is going to recognize me for. I don't know what the fuck it is exactly, but I'm gonna do something that I'm a goddamn it, all eyes on me. As a little kid, even in kindergarten, I remember when I first got to school, we used to wrestle in the goddamn sand pit at school and shit. Every recess, all the boys were out there wrestling and shit. And I wanted to be, be the top wrestler. I wanted to throw all the boys around and shit.
Right.
I just wanted to be the best as far as I can possibly remember. So 3-year-old Coach Chet walking around barefoot and shit. No, I don't know. He probably had shit. Did you think you were going to be the best way back then?
Yeah, I mean, as long as like the early days for me, that I go back to like a sport or a greatness feat when it comes to like something like athletic or same type of feel. Like, and I never thought I was going to be president. I had those type of aspirations in the business world, or was even thinking business at that age. But I remember we moved from Madrid to Maine. Like Maine, Loring, Maine. And I remember at that time, it was like a birthday that, somebody, and I was in the sports, same thing, gym class. We were going to class playing whatever sport. Like I wanted to be, I need to score the most points. I need to do, like be the top guy. But I got a helmet, a New Orleans Patriots helmet. And, or not New Orleans, New England Patriots. The New England Patriots, kind of like what the Kansas City Chiefs are to us in Omaha. It's like that closest, that's the team you follow. They're always on TV. So, I became a New England Patriots fan when I was like 4 or 5 years old. And, got this helmet playing football. And, like at that time, even when I played football, it wasn't about the game this weekend, like just playing, these little kids. And like, no, I was already thinking like, man, like I'm watching, football on TV, watching, some of these athletes on like, that's going to be me. I'm gonna be out there, on Sundays and Mondays, and y'all are gonna know who I am. Like that's what it was when I was younger. I thought I was playing football, like for sure. I never had like I said, never had the size. I always had the athletic. Always wanted, if not the fastest kid, the top, one of the top fastest kids. I always had that killer instinct. Like I said, I didn't care about how big you big. Like it's gonna be something when I pop you. Like that was my mentality. I want to run around you. I want to run through you. And like really shine that way. So yeah. I mean, as long as I can remember with particularly sports, like I knew I wanted to be great. Like at least that 1%. At least calling me a professional something. And I never knew that it would lead me to boxing or coaching. Like actually with boxing, it started off. I had an amateur coach coming to my gym. I had the gym. He was training me private. I'm getting ready to try to do an amateur match, and like I'm getting ready for like, and even then like I was older. Like by that time 2014, I had to be 7, that's 9, 15. I had to be almost 30, 27, 28 years old. Like when I'm first learning how to amateur box, 30 years old. And even at 30 years old, I'm thinking, you got the buds that started when they were 7. But I just knew I had that work ethic mentality. I'm like, okay, I'm going to start, 30 years old, I'm going to start with this. I'm going to be a world champion. Like not crazy. It's just, that's how like our mentality is. And I'm not saying, you're always going to be successful at it, but like, to have that thought process that, you can be great, you can do great things, especially if you've got the work ethic behind it, like, then why not? So yeah.
And that's the mental part of it. If you can't even think it or believe you can get there, you may have the physical gifts, but if you don't have the mindset to take you there, You're not gonna
You
get
ain't
there.
gonna do it.
Yep.
You ain't,
You're
and
not
that's
gonna do it.
that's what I just felt like my mind. You might have more experience, but I've got that the mindset, that work ethic, and like you're not gonna beat me mentally, and I'll do whatever it takes. Again,
I
like
am
put in whatever
always
work.
blown away on this show. We have guests on, and what you just said, it tickled me because it's the thing he always says. I've always heard this. It don't matter. Nothing else matter. I can
Oh
die,
God,
whatever. But at the end of the day, I'm gonna be the best at this shit, and ain't nothing you can do to stop me. I've heard this man say that over and over all the years I've known him. And so anytime we have guests on this show, it's so interesting. Those of you who sit at the top of your professions always have that same mindset. And that's the thing that always stands out to me when we have guests on these shows that are at the top of their professions. It's the same thing I've been hearing this man say for years.
Well, I heard myself and Coach Chet, the young fella, I heard myself in everything he was saying,
Yep.
man. I'm like, that's me. He's saying exactly what I would say. So, yeah, I heard myself in your story over and over again, especially how you went through your recovery from such a traumatic accident. I did not know the circumstances around it, how you got in that position, but I know that you had to recover from being paralyzed, but how you got to be paralyzed, I didn't know that part. And having those, when the doctor came in and told me that I had a woman's heart in my chest, that was my moment where, like you said, you had a moment where you talked to God, and I'm like, hey, God, because, I did all these studies and stuff on how a woman's heart, the survival rate for a man with a woman's heart was so much less than man-to-man, transplant. So I was like, God, come on, man. Why did you, why you do this to me? You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Why did you, I was doing good up until then because, I figured after I had the surgery and I wake up, if I woke up, I'm winning, man. If I could do the rest. My mindset was like, if you let me wake up, whatever it takes to get back, I can do that. But just let me wake up. So when I woke up, I was like, I'm going to do, no problem. I got this. Doc come in and say, you got a woman's heart, right? Oh, shit. Man, what did you tell me that for? I'm doing great. I didn't ask you. I didn't need to know. He volunteered the information. The other doctors were mad at him for telling me because I didn't need to know right then. I'm trying to recover. He tell you got a woman's heart. Man, I did. Who was it? Elijah. I think it was Elijah turned his face to the wall and started praying. When I turned my face to the wall at night, I'm like, hey, God, you let me go through this surgery, you let me do all of, and then you give me a woman's heart? Man, I just don't understand why you did this to me. I'm complaining and shit. And he said, hey, you know what, CT? If I gave you a 18-year-old, 17-year-old, and the woman was close to my age, the doctor told me everything. She's close to your age, old lady, and you got a woman's heart. I'm like, oh, fuck. He said, if I gave you a 16-year-old heart, healthy young man, and you got up and you were able to come back and walk around, people would say, oh, it's because of that heart. You got a new heart. You got a brand new youngster's heart, and that's why he's doing so well. But if I gave you an old lady, a woman's heart, and you still stand up and get up and walk around, then they're going to give me the credit for it. They're going to say, God must be behind. God must have did that because he got a woman's heart, an old woman's heart, and look at him. He's still talking shit. Must be God. So, yeah, I had that moment because I heard that, and hey, boy, I was wondering if you had a little moment there. But after he told me that, I was good. Let me shut up. Let me shut the hell up.
You got a heart.
Yeah.
You got a heart. You know what I mean? Some people don't make it to,
Absolutely.
get that heart.
Absolutely. They don't make it. Now let me shut up and quit complaining. That's right.
No,
So I gotta ask you, one thing CT is known for is his training methods. They're unorthodox, I guess you can say. Your approach to training, is it more science-based? How would you say your training style is?
So,
I asked that question to be funny to him because he calls you, whether it was the MC squared, pencil head motherfuckers with all that technical shit that he wasn't doing. So
come on now.
What was your training style?
Let me put it this way. Like, there's a lot of jobs out there, a lot of jobs. You get on a job, you might not know everything with that job, but you got some educational experience or some trait that they see that they know you could be well at that skill. And, like I think the best experience comes from the work experience. You know what I mean? Like, actually putting in the work. It's not the education. Like I got my NASM CPT, and I don't feel like, like I gained much more knowledge or changed my structure, how I train myself or, other individuals based on that certification. I got that certification just because I wanted to put people at ease. Like, like obviously I wasn't working for a gym, so I didn't need a CPT, but I wanted them to have that comfort of, this person's got this certification. He's educated himself to that level, but like most of it was from, like I said, from the time I remember when I was in, it had to be the 9th, 8th grade. I had a friend that lived, 2 houses, like, from me. I got him into working out. We put some weight equipment in his parents' basement. We had these little, I wish I had it. We had these little, like membership cards. We called it, Gym Swole or Swole Gym or something like that. We called it like just, made these little cards, put our pictures on our names and stuff, like when we worked out and put in work every day. So like, I think, like my experience came from, like since I think I got a video of, the first time I'm in my own basement with my brother and my dad. And, my brother, he was, into sports, and I looked up to him, and, he's got his little bench press thing, and I put on some, like some weight, and I'm like, oh, I could do 10, 15 pounds more. He's like, my dad's like, well, just do this first, and, like I'm struggling with the weight. I take off my shirt, like, but from that young 6, 7, 8 years old age, like, I knew I enjoyed and had a passion and a purpose for working out. Like, it wasn't something you had to get me to do. Like, I loved to do it, like, and that was when I wasn't trained, it wasn't for football. I just loved to lift weights. I loved to, get my body moving. So, like I went from there to, like learning new stuff, just researching myself, a long time, trying out new methods. Obviously, like going back to 2010, 2000, there wasn't the social media blitz of, everybody's got all this information, there's all this stuff. It was just me trying shit, like finding shit, trying new shit, opening a gym, like working with all different types of individuals. You fast forward that 10 years later, like I said, almost 28, 30,000 probably hours worth of training people. You learn a lot of different shit. Just like on a job, the more you do something, the greater you're going to be at it. So, like I was obsessed, and I know this is a word that, CT loves. Like I was obsessed with that industry, with that, like area of fitness, and, like exploring the body and learn. Like even when I started bodybuilding, like I was, 2015, 2016, I think 2016 when I did my first show. And, like I wanted to do the Arnold Classic because it was the biggest show that an amateur could do. You could get your pro card if you want it, like, and not mindful of, a lot of the people that were going to be competing on that stage with me might have been doing that for 10 years. And they've been putting in that type of work and, put on that type of significant lean mass. It takes time, and so like I went into it, I'd say a little, not cocky, but just too overconfident. Like, I just thought like, oh, nobody can outwork me. Nobody, I'm training world-class athletes and, they ain't going to do it, but I still didn't understand the science behind, the, like really the diet and macronutrient nutrient dieting and, like the posing, how important posing was, like I didn't take that. So like, but you learn from it, like that that show right before, my accident, I was in, probably 4 or 5% body fat, like one of my heaviest, getting ready to get on stage. And, like I was that 1% physique, maybe in the world, like I felt ready for it, but it was the education, the experience, those 4 previous years, not doing as great as I thought it would do, the previous year, making it to the finals and, just like improving from there, so like, I think, like when it comes to the now and, the science behind some of these athletes that I work with, and significant competition and championships. And, like a lot of that just comes from, like my whole life has been surrounded by it. So like, like it's not I can't put a program together for somebody that's, like competing for an undisputed championship like Bud and say, go run with this for them. No, I need to see them every single day. And, like that's the beauty of being a part of the training camp is it's not just about when we're doing strength and conditioning. It's, like seeing where your endurance and how your legs are when you're boxing, or, like you might be doing a run, or, like you might have, some agitation with some lingering, like pains, and, like going from there. And, how do we work on those deficiencies? And, like it's every day analyzing that athlete, and that, distinguishes what we're going to do the next day. The next day it might change. I might have an idea of what I want to do the night before, and then, we get to training and it might change right when we get there. You know what I mean? And like knowing your athlete, listening to, they know their body better, especially if they're, like I said, that 1% that's, motivated to put in work. Millions of dollars that motivate them. It shouldn't be me. It should be that millions of dollars that are on the line. So, like really knowing how to push, like without breaking them down, and, understanding the body. Like it comes with time and experience and education. That's why I said there's a lot of trainers that are making hell of a lot more money and know the business side of social media and how to push their brand, better than I do, and that's what they put their time into. Like for me, like I don't doubt, I think one of the first training camp that I did with Bud, like 2 weeks before the fight, I'm sitting with Bo Mack, and I've told this story a ton of times, but I'm sitting with Bo Mack and Red. We're at a cigar lounge, just getting ready to go to the next city for fight week, and just trying to relax. On the weekend, we got an easy day. The next day, they're just doing the Manitou Incline, walking up this mountain in Colorado Springs, and then off the rest of the day. We don't really have to think anything out. And Bo Mack had asked me, he was just like, what's it like joining the top team in boxing? We're the greatest team in boxing. And, I'm telling you right now, like you're joining what'll be the Michael Jordan of boxing when he's done boxing. This is 10 years ago, and I'm thinking like, okay, Floyd, I'm a Floyd fan. I don't know. Like, he's good. He's from Omaha. I love that, but, like we'll see, like I guarantee, he's got the work ethic. I've seen it, like, but we got to go do the work. We got to go, get those accolades before I can even think that far ahead. But, to answer your question, Bo, like, I think I'm supposed to be here. I'm here for a reason. I feel like I'm the best strength and conditioning coach in the world. And, he's got the luxury of having that on his team as well. So, I'm not taking away from what I do either, like whether I was coaching your team or, some single, not single, but some stay-at-home mom that just had a baby and is working from that weight. If they're willing to put in the work with me, I'm going to make them great. I know I've got that capability. So, I think that's, like I said, it comes down to mindset, some of those things that, I've always had, like I was born with, or maybe, like developed throughout the relationship that I had with my family and friends that were close to me. So.
Okay. Now we in Bud territory.
Yep.
So, speaking of Bud, and you getting him ready to go up two weight classes and fight the baddest man in that weight class, and you do it successfully. I mean, he was tight as fuck at that weight. I mean, when they showed the weigh-in picture, I said, oh shit, Coach Chet got him right. He got him right. And to put on that much weight and have it be absolute muscle. I mean, some people, you'll see some cats move up weight classes and their stomach will show, they have a little fat here and there, and they get a little fluffy. But you had him absolutely right for this. To dial him in that much and that specifically, and get him so ready, what was that process like?
I mean,
did that come from knowing him? Does that come from knowing him so well?
I mean, I've been around the team a long time. He's got a lot of trust in what I do. It was February when we started working together, like the fight was in September, and it was, just kind of like some talks and rumblings, and, like the fight wasn't set. There was no contract signed. And, like when I heard, the rumblings, that's when I reached out to Bud. I'm like, Bud, like it's something we've wanted for a while. Canelo didn't want the fight, when we fought Madrimov and wanted him next. And even before Madrimov at 154, like that was, he's wanted Canelo for a long time. He's always felt like he could beat Canelo the way in fashion he did, for a long time. So I already had, his confidence like set. I knew the work ethic was there. And I've had his trust, for a long time. That's why I've been, the only strength and conditioning coach that can say I was part of all 3 of his undisputed championships. So, the trust was there. So in February when I reached out, I'm like, hey, let's get going. Let's work on it now. Canelo's signing the contract on this William Skull fight. He's going to be in training camp next week. He'll get to fight. If we're looking at, September, October, then, like he's already in fight shape. Come May when he fights Skull, he might take off a week or two, and then, he's going right back to camp. Like, this dude's not taking time off. So, we don't have time to waste either. Like, now's the time to try to put on whatever size, that we're going to put on. It's going to be in the early stages. Like, he was all for it, was training him at his house. I go to his house in the mornings before, my other job, and, train him, go to the boxing gym after, stay on top, make sure he's getting his cardio and his abs in. And like it started there because we started early, and, like he had that commitment to it. He had this great, legacy moment that he knew, like that's the worst thing you could do. The worst thing you could do, like even in bodybuilding, is hop on stage and felt like you could have done more. I think, like once I had that commitment from him in the beginning and had that trust, then, like it was kind of seamless for me. Like I can't take all the credit. Yeah, that's a great shot. I can't take all the credit, like we've got a great team. We've got boxing coaches that have been around for a long time, the runs. You've got a committed athlete that, like is not afraid to put in, whatever work it takes. We've got nutritionists, we've got doctors, there's a lot of elements that, bring that final, like that image, that you just got showed. Like I can't take all the credit, but when it comes to the conditioning and putting on size and power, I mean, I think that was kind of my mindset. Like Bud's fought other individuals, like I remember when he fought Felix Diaz. Felix Diaz was this great glorified amateur, supposed to be like this powerful Mike Tyson-like puncher that was this great southpaw. And, like Bud went in that fight, like, like they're calling you one of the greatest southpaws that I've been in the ring with. I'm going to show you why I'm a better southpaw. I'm going to fight you southpaw. And, I'm going to be a better southpaw. So, like he had that mentality, like I'm going to do whatever it takes and I want to beat you at whatever they say you're great at. So, like I had that athlete already on my side who thinks that way. And, you got a coach that thinks that way when it comes to the strength and conditioning. So, like I heard all the chatter about, Canelo's the bigger fighter, the stronger fighter, he can't handle his punches and, Bud can't hurt him. And, like that was my mindset going in. I've got some other stories in my timeline that I talk about, like, okay, once we get to the fight night, once we get to the weigh-ins, he's not gonna be the smaller guy. Once we get to the fight, you're not gonna be talking about he was the more powerful guy, or, like, and I know he could have lasted another 12 rounds, damn near, that fight.
Did anything about that fight surprise you?
No. Yeah,
the reason I asked that question is because every analyst I saw after that fight talk about it, they all were talking about how surprised they were that Bud did what he did to Canelo. Everybody was so surprised that Canelo.
I mean,
just say what it
styles
is.
Make fights. Yeah, and I don't think that like Canelo style bodes well for Bud. I don't think any of us thought that way. Like the conditioning, I knew, like, Canelo comes in, he's always prepared for his fights, but he's not going to be as conditioned. Like, Bud's going to be ready to go every round like it's the first round. That's my goal, as a trainer. Like, I want every round to feel like it's the first couple rounds as far as energy levels and, how much snap and pop you got to your punches. And, like we saw, like we're in camp, 12 weeks, so like we saw it day in and day out while we're putting in all these sessions, boxing sessions, sparring sessions. We saw where his goal was. We saw, we're filtering in other sparring partners. He's going 12 rounds, and it might be 4 fighters that, we're contenders or, like heavy or like we saw him be able to handle that for a long time and knew that no matter, who Canelo went to get, as a sparring, like even when he went and got Boots, like Boots is, talented, young, champion now, paper champion, but champion. And that's not Bud. Like you can go get whoever you want. Nobody can, turn it on, turn it off, turn it up, switch hit, at any moment in time, like Bud can. So like, I don't think there was anything as a surprise for our team or myself, just because we know, like how special this dude is. And now, now the world knows, now the world knows.
All right, Pops, I'm gonna let you close it out. Your last questions before we get out of here. Go ahead. I'm gonna let you take it away.
You can close it out, but that intangible aspect, you knew you had a dog. You knew Bud was up for anything, but people are, his physical capabilities, strength is the number one strength conditioning coach. But he had the missing link that people, when I first heard about it, I said, Bud gonna whoop his ass, because the missing link is that dog that he has had in him, like you said, since a little child. He was born with that shit. And you could teach a whole lot of shit, but you can't teach that dog, boy. You gotta have that from birth. And Terence Bud Crawford had that shit from birth. He's a dog from birth, and I just knew he was going to win because, if all things being equal, say the same size, if everything's being equal, then the dog is going to win at the end. He got that fucking dog, that birth.
You ain't telling no lie.
Yeah,
you ain't telling no lie.
Let's go do it. So I'm done with you.
The fight itself, I think for me is, and I love Max Kellerman, but just seeing, you could tell a lot of people did not have their money on Bud to win that fight.
Whole lot.
And to see the sad looks on a lot of people's faces as Bud came through victorious in that fight, I was like, oh man, a lot of people bet against Bud in that fight. And that shocked me. I'm just like, now y'all see what Terence has been doing for a while now. Y'all really thought Canelo was just going to come here and dog walk him? I didn't understand that aspect of it at all.
Dr. Dre, I must say, me and Dr. Dre was going back and forth and stuff on it. He always, months early, as soon as we heard about the fight was going to happen, Dr. Dre said, we both said, because a lot of times we disagree, but he said, we both said Bud going to win this shit.
What is that? He ain't going to whoop his ass. We thought we was going to whoop. No, like in the stadium, 70,000. I think that was the biggest attendance at the Allegiant to date. And, heavily, probably 90% Canelo fans, even around me. And it's funny because I think it was like by the third round started, and you can see the energy in that whole place. It just, just bottomed out, like Canelo. And then I think there is one thing that, did kind of surprised me with Canelo in that fight was, ninth round when, he's throwing his hands down and frustrated.
Yeah.
You can tell, I felt like he, by the ninth round, he was just like, man, get this shit over with. Like, he didn't want to be in there. You know what I mean? That surprised me that, and then 12th round, Bud almost, he wobbled him, he had that stanky leg for a second. And at the end of the 12th, I thought, and, Bud's got that killer instinct. I thought he was going to get out there. So I'm also surprised, Canelo made it out that 12th round, because I thought, when Bud saw him shake, that leg shake and give out, you'd already seen him frustrated. I was like, man, this dude might not make it out this round.
Yeah, it was a lot of sad faces. And the one picture that sticks in my mind is them talking to Max Kellerman after that fight, and just the look of disappointment Max Kellerman had on his face. I'm like, Max must have lost a lot of money on this damn fight, because he was looking sick. I don't think it's so... Max, I love you. I'm a big fan of Max Kellerman, but the disappointment and the sadness on that man's face after that fight was like, yeah, you put your money in the wrong place. Max, you put your money in the wrong place.
Hey,
tell us something about Bud that we don't know. You work with him. What's something, before we end the show, what's something about Bud that the world would probably be?
When your mama pay neighborhood kids to beat you.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, that story was crazy.
When your own mama pay other kids to beat you, you ain't gonna beat no motherfucker like that. You out your motherfucking mind. Shit, no. Hell no. Okay, I'm sorry.
Something about Bud that nobody would know. This dude, when it comes to competition, and I think, I'm not saying that people don't know it. It's just like, when I say built different, it doesn't matter what you're doing. Like there's it's always a competition. He's going to compete no matter what it is. It could be sitting around the house and, he sees you do something. Let me try it. I could do that better. You know what I mean? I think that's something that most people can't understand, because it's not like I'm doing it just for fun. No, I'm doing it because I just want to be better at everything. And, that's something about Bud is he truly feels like he is better. He could do anything you do better. Maybe, if it's first time he's learning it, fine. But once he learns it, he's going to be better at you for life at that. You're never going to beat him again at it. And, he's going to want to keep doing it till he beats you at it. So, I mean, he's just there's the Kobe's, the Jordans. And, I think if people don't know it now, that's one thing they might not know and need to realize. He's got that type of killer instinct in him, that type of dog in him that, like I said, you can't train it. You can't train. You either have it or you don't. And I'm not saying I, didn't make I think I made a difference in, how he looked and, the size and all, but no matter who he had in his corner he was winning that fight. I mean, he was going to win that. I can't take credit, how he won, how he looked, obviously, being able to 12 rounds and, look like he could still go another 6 to 12. I might have helped there, but, at the end of the day, this dude is just, he's got, some people just got this thing where, it doesn't matter. It's always going to be a competition. They always, have to win to feel fulfilled, in themselves. And, and that's just, it's special, so that's one thing about Bud that I think, whether they know it or not, they need to know, the type of level of committed dedication to winning, in life at everything they do.
All right. Now, before we go, Pops, if I'm not mistaken, this is the gentleman we need to thank for meeting Bud Crawford.
Oh, yes,
year.
definitely.
So
100%.
I want to personally thank you.
100%. Yeah,
we were able to come out and meet Bud before his last fight. So thank you so much for that, because that was absolutely amazing. So
absolutely.
And just to see the focus, even when he was taking pictures with us, you could tell his brain, he was still focused on that fight coming up, and he was not going to let anything break that concentration. I mean, he was cool as all get out, but the one thing I picked up on, I'm like, this brother is laser focused.
Yeah.
Locked in.
Laser focused. He is locked in. And he going to stand here and take these pictures and say hi to the few people, but ain't nothing going to break him away from being prepared for this fight.
No way. No, you're right. No problem. I'm glad y'all were able to pull up. Yeah. We enjoyed it. Everybody enjoyed seeing y'all. So I'm glad we were able to make that happen.
We appreciate that more than I can put into words. So, Pops, any closing remarks before we get out of here?
Thank you for being on the show, Coach. I appreciate the hell out of it.
Appreciate y'all. It's all love.
So before we go, I got to tell, anything you want to plug your business, all of that stuff, let the people know how they can reach out to you.
So the handle I use most is Instagram, Strength Condition Coach. Find me there. I got some other ones, but that's the one I'm on the most. I'm on LinkedIn at Chet Fortune. CoachChet.com. I'm updating now, but it's up and running still. And then Chet Speaks, because I do public speaking engagements and stuff like that. So ChetSpeaks.com is another way they can reach me. But no, I love being on the show. Glad y'all have me on. I appreciate y'all. I'm going to stay in touch with y'all both.
Man, we appreciate you, and we're going to end this show like we do every show.
Fuck y'all.
It's the Fy'all podcast. It's the